Imagine this. In the vast, burning silence of the Nevada desert, where the ground stretches endlessly under a sky so clear it feels almost artificial, there is a place that does not behave like the rest of the world. A place surrounded by emptiness, secrecy, and questions that never seem to age. A place known as Area 51. On official maps, it exists, but in conversation, in rumor, in imagination, it becomes something else entirely. A locked door in the middle of reality. And behind that door, according to decades of speculation, something extraordinary might be happening. Something connected not just to military technology, but to the biggest question humanity has ever asked. Are we alone in the universe? Because around Area 51, one idea has survived longer than almost any modern conspiracy or rumor. The idea of UFOs, unidentified flying objects. Not necessarily alien spacecraft, not necessarily anything extraterrestrial, but objects in the sky that behave in ways that do not match known physics, known engineering, or known human capability. And this is where the story begins to spread across time. Not from one event, but from many moments that slowly build into something larger than themselves. It starts in 1947, a time when modern aviation is still young, radar is still developing, and humanity is only beginning to truly understand the sky as something measurable rather than mysterious. A private pilot named Kenneth Arnold is flying near Mount Rainier in Washington state. The weather is clear, visibility is excellent, everything appears normal. Until something interrupts that normality. In the distance, he sees a formation of objects, 9 of them, moving together with precision, fast, synchronized, and strangely fluid in motion. They do not behave like airplanes. They do not behave like birds. They do not behave like anything he has ever trained to recognize. He later describes their movement as if they were skipping across water, smooth, fast, and strangely coordinated. And in trying to explain what he saw, he uses a phrase that changes everything. Flying saucers. A simple description, but it spreads like wildfire. Because suddenly, people now have a label for the unknown. And once something has a name, it becomes easier to imagine, easier to report, easier to believe might exist somewhere else too. And almost immediately, reports begin to appear across the United States. Strange lights in the sky, objects moving at impossible speeds, shapes that do not fit any known aircraft profile. And while many of these reports can be explained individually, the pattern they form is harder to ignore psychologically, because it creates a sense that something is happening, even if no single explanation fits all cases. Then comes Roswell, New Mexico, 1947. A remote ranch, a sudden crash, and an announcement that changes everything. A local newspaper reports that a flying disc has been recovered by the military. For a brief moment, the world holds its breath. Because if true, this is not just a strange sighting anymore. This is physical evidence, something tangible, something real, something that could change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. But within hours, the story shifts. Official statements replace excitement with dismissal. The object, they say, was simply a weather balloon, a routine instrument used for atmospheric observation. Nothing more. Case closed. But in human psychology, sudden closure does not always create certainty. Sometimes it creates suspicion, because the explanation feels too quick, too clean, too final. And this is where Area 51 begins to emerge in the background of the story. Not directly, not officially, but in the growing gap between what is said and what people feel is missing. Because if something unusual was recovered at Roswell, it had to go somewhere. And rumors begin to form that suggest a highly classified facility deep in the Nevada desert, a place not acknowledged publicly for many years, a place later known as Area 51. And with that name, something changes in public imagination. Because secrecy transforms ordinary locations into extraordinary ones.
The less people know, the more they assume there must be something worth hiding. And so Area 51 becomes a blank canvas onto which theories are projected. Crashed spacecraft, reverse-engineered alien technology, biological samples of non-human origin, hidden communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. None of these claims have ever been publicly confirmed, but they continue to circulate because stories like these do not survive on evidence alone. They survive on uncertainty, and uncertainty is a powerful force. Officially, Area 51 is part of the United States Air Force Testing and Development Network, a site used for experimental aircraft, stealth technology, reconnaissance systems, and advanced aviation research programs, many of which are real, documented, and consistent with military needs during the Cold War and beyond. But official explanations only cover what is allowed to be known, not what is classified. And this distinction is where perception and imagination begin to diverge. Because in the absence of full information, the human mind does what it always does.
It fills in the gaps. Over time, UFO sightings continue to evolve. Commercial pilots report fast-moving objects that appear to change direction instantly without visible propulsion. Military radar systems detect unexplained aerial anomalies that do not match known aircraft behavior. And in some cases, videos are later released showing unidentified objects performing maneuvers that challenge immediate explanation. These cases do not prove extraterrestrial origin, but they do prove something else: that not everything observed in the sky is immediately understood. And that alone keeps the conversation alive. Scientists and analysts offer multiple explanations: atmospheric distortion, optical illusion, sensor malfunction, classified human-made technology. And in many cases, these explanations are plausible, but not universally satisfying for every reported incident, which is why the debate continues. Not purely in science, but also in culture, media, and human curiosity itself. And at the center of it all remains a question that refuses to disappear. Are we alone? Because if we are not, then everything changes. Our understanding of biology, physics, history, and even meaning itself would shift dramatically. And that possibility, even if unproven, is enough to keep the mystery alive across generations. Area 51, in this sense, becomes more than a physical location. It becomes a symbol, not necessarily of aliens, but of the unknown itself, of the space between what is confirmed and what is concealed. And that space is where human imagination thrives the most. Today, the base remains heavily restricted, guarded, and surrounded by strict security protocols. Officially a military testing facility. Unofficially, a cultural icon of secrecy and speculation. And between those two identities, the mystery continues to exist. Not because it has been proven, but because it has never been fully closed. And as long as there are unanswered questions, people will continue to look up at the night sky, watching for something unusual, something unexplained, something that moves in a way it shouldn't, and wondering, quietly, what if the story is not just rumor? What if something has been there all along, just beyond the limits of what we are allowed or able to see?